Kenny Pickett, the next Pitt franchise QB. We're here to address all that today for the first round pick for the Steelers, Kenny Pickett. Hey, the last time they picked in the first round of quarterback, it went pretty well. We're about to break that down right now on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. Hey, folks, welcome back to another great episode of the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Lamarco. Today, we're going to have a trifecta today. We have some mainstays that are going to be great on the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast all season long. I'm excited to bring in Donkey Teeth and also Sky in just a moment. But I want to make sure everyone's following us across the board. The Razzball Fantasy YouTube channel is skyrocketing, folks. We are fastly approaching 500 subscribers. Make sure you guys jump onto YouTube and follow us, subscribe, hit the bell. Make sure you're getting all those notifications when we're dropping videos constantly. We're dropping videos on the baseball side. We have animation, people. Make sure you're following us on the YouTube page. It is awesome. We also have IG and TikTok now at Razzball Fantasy. Make sure you're checking out our quick videos on there as well. A bunch of great content coming out on Razzball. But more importantly, make sure you're going to razzball.com. We have articles posting every day on the baseball side. We have, great off-season content for football. We got basketball. We got hockey. We got all of it. So make sure you're going to razzball.com to check out all the great stuff coming out for us. So without further ado, let's bring these fellas in. First off, we got Donkey Teeth, basically the chief, the captain of the ship. What's going on, Donkey Teeth? This is our first real podcast together in a very long time.
Hey, yeah, I'm just trying to, steer the ship not off a cliff. And thank you, Bobby, for all your help with this. You got me pumped to follow the Razzball YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. I've been watching Bobby's videos on TikTok, and they crack me up every time. I love it.
That's beautiful. And Sky, what's going on, man?
Bob, always great to be back with you, brother. Happy to break down another one of these rookies. I am very excited to get best ball underway, dynasty underway, start getting into redraft here pretty soon as well. So let's get another one.
Now, we got to talk. Now, we've been doing running backs and receivers, and we decided today, of all days, to be kicking it over to the QB position and talk a little Kenny Pickett, the only first-round quarterback taken. And, Sky, since this was the guy you wanted to talk about, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about what you learned about Pickett and his transition to the NFL.
Well, in this draft class, which wasn't very exciting compared to last year, of course, we had 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks we were excited about last year. This year, Kenny Pickett goes in the first round, the only first-round quarterback, and frankly, I think the only one that's going to see major playing time this season. Now, look, your boy Mitch Trubisky is going to get first dibs probably in Pittsburgh, but unfortunately for Bears fans, we know all too well it probably won't last too long. Unfortunately, I'm not a Mitch hater, but unfortunately, I just don't think it'll keep up long enough to keep a first-round quarterback off of the field. So Kenny Pickett comes in, 20th pick overall, as you had mentioned. Not an incredible combine. We got the small hands thing, not worried about it. Alex Smith, perennial All-Pro. Then you have Drew Brees, you have Joe Burrow, not worried about that situation. Talking about him coming out of college in the ACC, not a dominant football conference. He played 5 years at Pitt. Not often these days do we see a fifth-year senior coming out of the NFL, especially at quarterback. These guys come out usually their junior year, if not their senior year, which is 3 or 4. Now, he wasn't very impressive until this year. This year, he lit up the ACC, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 11-3 ACC championship for the Pitt Panthers. But he increased his completion percentage by 6%. That is a massive upgrade, which obviously you like to see, and skyrocketed his draft capital. When we look at the Pittsburgh Steelers, last 2 seasons, unfortunately, we've had kind of the skeleton of Big Ben, unfortunately, which hasn't quite worked out for the Pittsburgh. They wanted to extend his career. He wanted to still try to win because they're so well coached, because they have a good defense, because they have a dominant offense in general. They're able to remain competitive, but it wasn't able to work out. But not for not trying, Bob. 4th in the NFL last year were the Pittsburgh Steelers in pass attempts, and over the last 3 seasons combined, not the Chiefs, not the Chargers, not Tom Brady, not the Rams, the Pittsburgh Steelers have the most passing attempts with 45 per game over the last 3 seasons. So Kenny Pickett's going to get the opportunity. He's going to have a chance to run what should be a great offense. We know Najee Harris, of course, Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool. They bring in my boy George Pickens, who's a beast as well. Pat Freiermuth. The offense is there for the taking. if he gets an opportunity, I think Kenny Pickett's going to be just fine, but it's going to all come down to draft capital because I do think Mitch Trubisky gets first dibs.
Now, my thoughts there too. I like your feedback there, but DT, this is going to be. Do you think, based on Sky's comments, really that he's going to be the starter week 1, or do you think it actually is going to be a Mitch Trubisky to start?
No, I'd have to echo pretty much everything Sky said in his recap there. Being on the wrong side here, being a Bears fan, I've seen plenty of Mitch Trubisky, and I'm not a Mitch hater either, but I have a hard time believing he's going to be, one of those post-type breakout guys. If he's going to be, Pittsburgh's as good of a landing spot as any, but I'm really not a believer. I guess the thing to me, I think Sky is a little bit more excited about Kenny Pickett in general than I am. So maybe they give Mitch a little bit more leash while they wait for Pickett to develop a little bit more. We've seen a lot of these quarterbacks struggle in their first season when they get thrown into the fire too soon. So I think as far as a developmental angle, I would probably prefer if I was a Pickett dynasty owner to see him stay on the bench for the majority of this season and learn the system, get to see Trubisky likely fail and kind of learn from that would be my hope actually as a dynasty owner.
Now, I'm personally thinking I want to see Kenny Pickett maybe do some of those Burger King commercials where he has the tiny hands, and I'm hoping that maybe he gets himself some money doing some sponsorships year 1, and then in year 2 he can hit the ground running. Because I was actually going to put that into the podcast, but I go, there's copyright infringement. I can't do that anyway. But anyway, beyond the tiny hands, I guess there's some things that I do like, and one of the things that I thought was interesting is Matt Canada was the OC in Pittsburgh in 2016. He was actually one of the main guys recruiting Kenny Pickett to Pittsburgh in college before he left for LSU. So Matt Canada, the OC now for the Steelers, was already high on Pickett. He recruited him in college, and I like the fact that they went out and got him in the first round. So obviously Matt Canada believes in this kid enough to say, hey, listen, not only did I recruit him, but I want him to come to the Steelers, and we're going to use our first-round pick on him as well. But also, his coaches in college had ripples to the Steelers. So Mark Ripple, his OC, was actually the QB coach for Big Ben his rookie season up until 2006. So I like that there's a little crossover there in Pittsburgh. I like the fact that he had an offensive coordinator who has experience in the NFL as well. So it's not like complete college-style coaching. So I do like that. The other question, though, comes down to, for me, is the weapons. And DT, I'm going to kick it over to you, too. So for this, I'm looking at, you have Deontay Johnson, who has a free agency in 2023. You have Chase Claypool as a free agent in 2024. Najee Harris and Freiermuth are on there for a couple of years. Then they just restocked with George Pickens and Calvin Austin. So does the weaponry get you excited for Pickett at least a little more than you normally would? Or do you think that he just might not have the talent to support that kind of weaponry?
No, I'm with everything Sky said. Honestly, I think that's a great landing spot for a young guy to come into with all of those weapons. I'm a huge fan of Deontay Johnson and Claypool and Najee Harris and Freiermuth and Mike Tomlin. To be honest, I think that's the kind of coach that you want as a young quarterback, and I think he's got everything that he needs to succeed. In another landing spot, I probably would have liked Pickett even less. I mean, Sky mentioned it. This is the least exciting quarterback class in, I don't know, a decade? There's not a whole lot there. So that's why we're talking about Pickett, in my opinion. It's just there's nothing all that exciting. And you see that there's one quarterback drafted in the first round. So I think it is a great landing spot. My concerns about Pickett are, you watch him, he just doesn't look naturally comfortable under pressure to me. And I think you see him throw off of his back foot a lot, which you can get away with all these guys that come into the NFL. They've been the best at every level. And so these little things they've been able to get away with just based on sheer talent and being that much better than everybody else around them. Now everybody's the best of the best that you're playing against. You're going to have a hard time getting away with these little flaws that you see with Pickett. Of course, that's why I'm talking about hopefully giving him a full season to develop and, learn from NFL coaching and the players around him. But, I'm a huge fan of Matt Waldman. I get his rookie scouting portfolio every year. He comped he comped Pickett to Drew Lock and Jay Cutler. I saw a lot of Drew Lock when I was, watching Kenny Pickett highlights from his college career, which is not necessarily a good thing, but I guess not necessarily a bad thing. I liked Drew Lock coming out of college. I thought there was a lot of potential there. And I think, you threw a Drew Lock as a rookie into a Pittsburgh system, things might have turned out totally different. So that's kind of the way that I'm looking at it. I think Jay Cutler would be a really nice outcome as a fantasy player if Kenny Pickett turned into that. As much as we in Chicago are not huge Jay Cutler fans in retrospect, he had some nice fantasy seasons, especially in Denver.
Yeah. Now, Scott, question though. Now, DT brought up a good point that he didn't look too comfortable with pressure. Now, the Steelers, you can say what you want about their offensive line, has not been good for years. And Big Ben, the biggest problem with him, who's getting the ball out so quick because he didn't want to get hit anymore because he was tired of it. They had the 26 PFF offensive line. They did make some moves this offseason. So does that concern you at all, Sky, the offensive line play, maybe with the style that Pickett likes to play?
Yeah, it concerns me a little bit, except for he has Najee Harris, who last year led the NFL in running backs with targets. And if you're going to dump down to a truck, I'm totally okay with that, right? If he's going to get 94 more targets out of the backfield, that's insane. I'm all about that. Some concerns there, though, Bob. I will give you that. And DT brought it up. I think that's a good point. So on deep passes, right, 20 yards or more in college last year, Kenny Pickett, his fifth season there, 15% completion percentage and seventh in the NFL, or seventh among college quarterbacks. Intermediate passes, 10 to 19 yards, 24%. That was 12th, which is fine. Now, short area targets, like shorter than a first down, 0 to 9 yards, 40% of his overall passing plays were these short area targets, 85% completion percentage, 20th among those quarterbacks that qualified. Now, you think 20th, and that's fine, 85%. But that's not very good because his offense had been this over the last couple of seasons. And if they're going to be throwing crossing routes all day long and dump offs to Najee, I assume that's going to boost his completion percentage overall. But I don't see him being a big play quarterback looking to throw 30, 40 yards down the field very often, like a young Big Ben. We know Big Ben hasn't been able to do that in the last 3 years. But that's what the Steelers offense has been for the last 15 years with AB, your boy Plaxico Burress behind you, right? Lots of options there with deep threats. I just don't know that Kenny Pickett's going to be that routinely, especially if he doesn't have the opportunity to stand back there and throw. We saw Joe Burrow, arguably one of the best quarterbacks coming up, obviously in the Super Bowl and everything else. He couldn't get enough time to make those deep throws to Jamar Chase last year. That's a problem. That's a concern for me for that offensive line. But if he gets the time, I do think Kenny Pickett can develop quickly.
So one thing I will say before we jump into ADP values right now is that I do like that Mitch Trubisky is on the team because it is offering a barometer. We kind of saw this last year with Cam Newton and Mac Jones. Mac Jones had to earn that starting job because Cam Newton is somewhat of an established QB. So if Kenny Pickett ends up beating out Mitch Trubisky, I actually think it'll make me more confident draft guys like Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool later in drafts. So I do think that is important. But let's talk a little bit about ADP. DT, I'm going to kick it over to you first. Right now, today, he's going outside the top 200 in best ball ADP, but he's also going 20th overall in rookie drafts. So I guess my question for you is if you're at that 1-2 turn range in a rookie dynasty draft, are you willing to take the shot on Pickett, or are you still going to go running back, wide receiver in that range?
Most likely going running back, wide receiver. I think in a dynasty rookie draft, the drafting quarterbacks, the qualifier is always going to be our team build. If you've got the need there, if you don't have a need at quarterback, then Pickett's not even on your board. He can go undrafted in your league. I'm actually in a best ball dynasty rookie draft right now with a bunch of industry guys. This is actually the Razzball Best Ball Dynasty. Should plug that. But we've got Andy Behrens, Pat Fitzmaurice, the CBS guys, Heath Cummings, Dave Richard, Michael Salfino, a lot of big names in this. And Pickett fell. This is a one quarterback league. He fell to pick 3-5. Heath Cummings took him there. And he actually was the second quarterback off the board. Willis went ahead of him to Nato DeFino at 3-1. So I think that's probably, I was actually looking at him there because I do have quarterback need. And this is best ball, so it's a little bit different. You don't want to get caught having only two quarterbacks in a best ball league, which is kind of where I'm at in this league, to be honest. So I was looking at him with the very next pick and actually got sniped by Heath Cummings. But I was going to take him at 3-6. I think that's about the right area. Redraft leagues, I'm probably not going to be taking Kenny Pickett.
Now, Sky, let's talk about some 2 QB super flex. Any shot you're taking Pickett this season if he ends up winning the job?
Yeah, if he wins the job preseason, then definitely. If it's definitely Mitch coming out as the starter, even if it's a Mitch is going to start week 1, and if he blows it, Kenny's in week 2, that's still not enough for me. In super flex leagues, here's the deal. You're going to need 3 quarterbacks. A lot of people take 4. It gets insane pretty quickly. But as DT mentioned, Kenny Pickett's not on your board unless he really flashes preseason, really flashes to get that starting job right away. We know the Steelers are already familiar with him because Pittsburgh in college and the Steelers share a training facility. So they've been kind of coaching this kid for many years. So there's going to be no surprises, in my opinion, to Kenny Pickett to the Steelers team. Just a matter of if he can produce with all these weapons. I think that he will be able to. But if he's not the starter coming out of the gate, I don't want anything to do with him. Now, in super flex rookie leagues, you're going to have to just draft a quarterback. But as I mentioned early here, this is not the draft class of last year. Last year, we were taking every quarterback because they all have potential. Kenny Pickett kind of does too. Willis does too, but falling to the 3rd round is massive in the NFL. And I know that Heath Cummings doesn't actually even like Kenny Pickett very much. So for him to just be like, okay, it's the 3rd round, I'll take him. That kind of shows you where he's at. So I'm not very excited about him. However, it is, it's May. If we get to August and this kid's looking to be the starter, I would like to have him on a dynasty roster in Superflex.
Go ahead, kick it, DT.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Scott. Things can change very fast, and if the hype starts building, I'll probably end up buying in too. But right now, I'm not super interested. But I just wanted to add another trinket here before we wrap it up. I was in a startup mock with those CBS guys today, Startup Dynasty 1 QB League, and it was 16 rounds. In these industry leagues, people tend to fade quarterbacks. That's not really a surprise. But all the way into the 16th round, Kenny Pickett fell. Troy King ended up taking him at pick 184 in this dynasty startup. So he was pretty much an afterthought. I think that's probably the area that I would take him, depending on who my quarterback was in that kind of league. But, in a startup dynasty, again, just like we're talking about with these dynasty rookie drafts, you don't necessarily need 2 quarterbacks. You don't need to roster 2 quarterbacks in all dynasty leagues. It depends how many players are on your roster. If you're only going 16 rounds, then, Kenny Pickett might not even be drafted.
All right, that's it, folks. I feel like we covered all the bases on this podcast today. I appreciate you both being on. This was our first trifecta of the new year, so this was exciting stuff. Once again, make sure you're following the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast on YouTube. Make sure you're following us across the board on TikTok, IG, and make sure you go into razzball.com to check out all the great content coming out on the baseball, football, basketball, and hockey side right now today. Once again, I'm your host, Bobby and Marco, for Donkey Teeth and Sky Gawasco. We're out of here, folks.